We're talking about different conceptions of world order. And people have different views of the role of religion as well. For some people, religion is the cause of all the problems in the world. There are cheap throwaway lines like, if we only could get rid of religion, or if there weren't religion, maybe there'd be a chance for peace.
People have no guideline.
Well, that's true. You're removing a moral framework. And so...
Not everyone, but some people do.
If you took away that framework, would it be even worse? Would there be a vacuum?
Because they'd have no framework, as you say, to work within.
Mm-hmm. And there are some people that view themselves as culturally Christian or Jewish, let's say. That means that they may not go to church or synagogue. They may not believe in the transcendental and metaphysical tenets of their faith. But in terms of cultural practice and customs and so on, they associate with a particular religious group. They might celebrate the festivals. They might even, let's say, a cultural or a secular Jew might still keep Shabbat with their family, or go to a Shabbat, or go to bar mitzvahs and raise their children in a certain way, but may not believe in Yahweh or the Ten Commandments, may in fact profess a form of atheism or materialism. Such would be the secular Jew. And Christians can be like that too. They love the holidays. They love, let's say, Christmas and the Christmas tree and Christmas presents and time off at Christmas and time off at Easter and so on. But they don't really care about the meaning of these solemnities. And there are some that say, well, I don't believe in all this God stuff, but I do like the decency and the morality that seems to be associated with this religion. So why can't we simply practice the ethics and leave it at that, and not quibble over the theology? Well, the question would have to be put to those people, and they are maybe growing in number, as are the spiritual but not religious cohort, because there has been a lot of disenchantment with organised religion. We could put the question to those people: can the branch grow that's cut off from the trunk of the tree? Can it grow for long, or will it wither and die? Does an ethical system, is it simply just a conventional thing that can be instrumentalised? Or does it have roots in theology, in revelation, in the holy books, to maybe the only way to sustain a good, decent, moral society is to return to the wellsprings of religion. Now, even if you're not religious, as I've said in an earlier episode, you would at least have an implicit ideology or belief system. You may actually not know consciously what it is, you may not articulate it, but you will be operating on a belief system. It might not be a traditional one. So I'm talking about one's ultimate beliefs about reality and life, man's relationship to the cosmos. A lot of these ultimate beliefs have been formalized in the religious traditions, and people can relate to the Creator and to each other, to their fellow practitioners through the traditions, and they are an important influence. And it's not so easily dismissible a statement to say that religions are the cause of all the wars in the world. At one level, that's probably true, because...
But I thought religion preaches anti-war.
Well, yes. Now, this is where we have to tread carefully, because I'm saying at one level, it's true in the sense that people's most deeply held, passionately held beliefs are the things that they are prepared to die for. And when you've got that motivation, you can easily see that motivation going to war and fighting to the end. On the other hand, the great religious traditions teach peace and love. And it seems incongruous because...
And not killing.
Thou shalt not kill.
Exactly.
So...
It's hypocritical in a sense.
Why are we witnessing so much killing?
I can't work it out.
Now, we've said in an earlier video that there is a distinction between legitimate self-defense and killing. There's a distinction between homicide and just war. But the nations of the world have seemed to abandon just war principles. Just war theory was articulated by Saint Augustine about 400 years after Christ. And then the Muslim jurists came up with a similar approach to analysing the causes and justifications for war and how it should be conducted. So for a long time, when Christianity and Islam vied for supremacy, at least in the Middle East and the Western world, leaving aside Asia and the rest of the world for the moment, when they vied for supremacy, there was a kind of common understanding of when killing was not killing, when war was justified. And there was quite a degree of commonality in the approaches of both these great religions. Just war principles are principles like one shouldn't prosecute a war of aggression, but only a war of defense. Another principle would be do everything you can to avoid going to war. Try to negotiate. Try diplomacy. It's only when everything else fails that war is a last resort. Another principle is that you do not even go to war unless you've done the calculus and believe that you can achieve more by doing so than by not. If you're going to cause more damage by going to war, then you should desist, even if you have a cause, even if you have a righteous cause. So if you can't win the war cleanly and swiftly, if you're up against greater odds, even with a righteous cause, you shouldn't go to war. And another principle, civilians, innocents,
I was about to mention that, yes.
are sacrosanct.
I would think war should be between military personnel, should have nothing to do with civilians.
That sense that you have, which a lot of people have, which I would say is common sense, is a long established traditional principle.
It is, and it's there for a reason.
In Christendom and in the Islamic Ummah, that war is to be fought between two armies.
That's right.
Right? There has to be a duly constituted authority that calls war, that enjoins war, and that only military competence should fall in war. That civilian populations, especially women and children, need to be protected.
Because you sign up for war, like you agree, you understand what goes on, and that's very, very different than being caught up in it as an innocent person. Very different.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't hold a just war theory, if you think that there is no need for proportionality in your response to an enemy, because that is a just war principle, proportionality. You know, somebody punches you, you don't slit their throat and throw their head into the river. That's not proportional. In self-defense, it's just about disarming the assailant. It's not about wreaking vengeance, unlimited vengeance. If you think, if they are my enemy, then I don't need to hold back. I can destroy them utterly. Well, I would put it to you that there's something both irrational and immoral with that. It doesn't even have the proportionality of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That was a precept given to the ancient Israelites at a certain time in their history.
At least that's fair, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
Yeah, it embodies
but if proportionality. If someone didn't take your eye or didn't take your tooth,
yeah,
completely innocent, then they don't deserve.
But let's say you're my enemy and there's no limit on what I can do to you, because all I care about is my people, not your people.
Why am I your enemy?
It just so happens that your interests are different from mine, because I feel I belong to this people and you belong to another people, and you're inimical. So if I feel that I could just do untold and unlimited damage to you, I'm incapable of fighting a just war. And it doesn't matter if I twist and misapply scripture from a distant time about utterly wiping out enemies. Whether they be Amalekites or any other. Anybody can twist Holy Writ. Remember, the Bible has been quoted by the devil. The devil knows his Bible. Anything can be weaponized. Anything good can be turned to a bad use, can be abused. And the Creator sees all this. And the blood of innocent people screams to heaven for defense. So there needs to be limit on war, otherwise we have no business having armies, even peacekeeping forces. Because once you give yourself carte blanche to do destruction and damage, next stop genocide, ethnic cleansing, annihilation. And it is a bit naive to think, oh, these conflicts, especially the big hotspot, the Israel-Gaza, there, the whole world is tied in a knot. To untie that knot would involve solving the whole world's problems, I think, because they're all focused there. And all the different conceptions of world order are competing there as well. And one must tread very carefully in understanding this situation. It's got deep roots, it's got history. It's got more power to polarize people in their thinking than virtually any other conflict. But I think it's a good illustration that we can't disregard religion as well. Remember, people will die for their religion. And remember, religion can be the cause of war. Religion is meant to be the cause of peace, the source of peace. And may the day hasten where we praise holy peacemaking rather than holy war. We've seen a horrendous loss of life in this whole war. The deaths of Palestinians are pushing 40,000 now, and their injured are pushing 90,000. And we've seen the initial toll on the Israelis at the beginning. But there is a potential for far more carnage, especially if this thing escalates into a regional conflict or even into a world war. But what a lot of people don't understand is this is not a war between Westphalian nation states, the state of Israel and the entity of the Palestinian authorities over in the West Bank, and then you've got Hamas-controlled Gaza. You do have a nominal entity in Lebanon, as another state, and it looks like this is a war between different nations. It's like if Germany and France go to war, or if the US goes to war with Mexico. Underlying it all is religious fundamentalism on two sides. And one form of religious fundamentalism evokes a response from the other, and it can be a vicious spiral. Now, I'm not here to pass judgment, but simply to draw awareness to a dynamic that the more religious fundamentalism intensifies on one side, the more it intensifies on the other side. And we're in a bind here. We're in a bind. Religious Jewish fundamentalism and religious Islamic fundamentalism as well. There's a real conflict. And if one doesn't take into account the religious dimension of this conflict, one won't comprehend it, and one won't get anywhere near a comprehension of what it would take to resolve a conflict of this magnitude. And there's not a lot of Westphalian world order in any of it, really. Although all the news commentators, when you listen to the news and you'll hear the names of countries on the modern map being mentioned: Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, the United States, Turkey, Iran, etc. It would seem that it's these entities that are jostling for power, etc. But there are also religious systems in collision, which are highly energized and implacable. So there has to be a deeper understanding of religion and indeed interfaith conflict to make any headway towards a resolution of the Israel-Palestine crisis, or the Middle East peace process, so-called. And the real drivers they're not interested in a two-state solution. We hear all our leaders of the liberal democracies talking about a two-state solution, but the realpolitik of the situation has more or less buried the possibility of a two-state solution with the current war. So this makes the matter even more vexed. But it does bring a kind of brutal clarity to the situation as well. So we might leave it at there for the time being.